Here is this new Supreme Court ruling. It deals President Trump another loss. This is a late Friday decision which halts Trump's attempted deportations. The loss cuts to the heart of the deportation agenda we've seen here, stopping Trump from efforts to rush deportations through by claiming these new powers and requiring the due process that his administration has been trying to crush. That's simply what the ruling does, and we're going to break down how. Here, though, first is the broad coalition that ruled against Trump late today, Friday. On the result, it's 7-2, including all Trump appointees joining the decision that deals him this new loss. It's the same coalition the court had in the earlier round in this case, which was an emergency ruling blocking deportations. Today, Justice Kavanaugh again ruled against Trump. He also concurred to add a process point that he would have the court take the rest of the case sooner, basically. All of this is bad news for Trump, who's acted like the court would maybe back him on everything that he wants because, in his mind, he won that big immunity case last year. He seemed to reference it at times dealing with Justice Roberts, the Chief Justice. Meanwhile, Trump's lawyers have been deliberately testing and sometimes breaking rules to try to see if they can get things fast-tracked to the Supreme Court so they might get granted new powers. Today's written ruling against Trump comes just after oral arguments where justices were very skeptical of Trump's other power claims. That was yesterday. And this also suggests an unusually fast and strong pushback to a president this early in his term. Legal experts say that is probably needed precisely as the proportionate response to given how radical President Trump has been acting, at least in these first 100 days of the term. Now, here are the details. We'll do it in plain English. First, the court majority found Trump's deportation plans break due process. That's the essential rules that protect you and any other resident in the U.S. against federal agents or police abusing your rights or mistakenly imprisoning or deporting you when they could have the wrong person. The court finding the Trump administration was crushing people's ability to exercise due process rights, which surely does not pass muster. Now, second, the Supreme Court rejected Trump's request to basically try to reboot and restart those particular type of deportations. We're not talking about all deportations, which continue in this country, like many countries that have immigration enforcement, but we're talking about these particularly controversial ones where he wanted to use war powers. And so the court in this new ruling found that President Trump is enjoined from removing any of these people suing and other basically similar people. The court uses other language, but they're referring to folks who might be removed under the Alien Enemies Act pending order. So that means this effort is now blocked. Federal agents cannot deport those particular people. And agents know they'd be risking their own careers and punishment if they break what is now, tonight, a clear Supreme Court order. Third, this ruling rebukes Trump's bid to try to rush and game the system. His agents were basically testing judges by seeing if they could just rush people out of the country without the due process and then tell judges, well, they're gone, so you don't have any jurisdiction over them anymore. If you've been following the news, you've seen that trick or ploy play out in some cases, but the court is saying that stops. It was most dramatically and kind of immaturely demonstrated, that approach, when Trump's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, posted an oopsie message online dealing with the very serious allegation that they had intentionally deported people, ducking judicial oversight because they allegedly did it after the judge had ordered, in that case, planes to turn back around. Now, today's order puts a stop to that type of lawless gamesmanship, but it also still leaves the final decision on these attempted powers for another day. And I can tell you tonight, that's how it's supposed to be. Cases go up the courts over time. And in the modern era, that happens without an administration in bad faith trying to cut the courts out of that process with these sort of ploys. In fact, it's interesting, I'm going to point out here that Trump appointee Kavanaugh refers to that today. I told you he wrote separately while joining with the big 7-2 majority against Trump, but he wrote separately noting that this ruling blocks Trump deportations by ensuring judges, quote, can decide whether these Venezuelan detainees may be lawfully removed before they are in fact removed. That is a reference to things working as they should rather than being gamed by Trump. And the point is, of course, an implicit criticism of that kind of Trump plot, where they were trying allegedly to remove and deport people before judges could rule on whether those moves, some of them, maybe none or maybe some, were in fact illegal. And if you think about that, of course, that's a blueprint for trying to get away with any illegal things. All of these are setbacks for Trump, suggests this case faces an uphill battle. But as Kavanaugh did note, the ruling blocks Trump's policy for further review in the courts. The Supreme Court has not made any of those final rulings, which take more time. Nicole Wallace and I were discussing that process, and sometimes you get these decisions later on in the process. Well, they haven't made a final merits ruling on the larger power grab that's attempted by Trump here. Will this court grant Trump those new wartime powers that he clearly says he wants to wield against migrants from countries that we're not at war with? We don't know yet. But this is a new ruling and has some clues that the 7-2 coalition is skeptical of some of these kind of power grabs. And that's striking because, remember, these past cases in general in American history, they do grant presidents, any president, a lot of power, a lot of broad kind of authority over immigration and national security. Immigration, for example, is something where there are laws set, but then the president enforces them. There's not a lot of back and forth with Congress on day-to-day activities. Ties, jump balls, they go to the president. But that's also bad news for Trump because, in other words, presidents get room for bold strokes and even some reasonable, honest errors. So it takes a lot for the court to block a president's entire use of a lane of immigration powers in real time, which is what's happening to Trump. And that relates to a fourth point in the ruling today. This court notes how Trump has not facilitated the return of the mistakenly deported man to El Salvador, Alberto Garcia, an individual who's now been caught up in all of this international gamesmanship. Trump basically confessed he could follow that court order, could get him back, but he's not gonna, at least for now. It's something the president actually admitted in one interview, and other officials have implied as much. And so now we're learning for the first time the court referring to that today, noting the Trump administration asserts it is unable to provide for the return of an individual it deported in error to a prison in El Salvador. And then it has the citation, that's lawyer speak, but the court is clearly referencing in the case there, Abrego Garcia versus Noem versus Trump Homeland Security. Now, the ruling previews the fact that Garcia has a strong case. Doesn't mean he'll win, but he has a strong case. The court saying today, for the first time, in Garcia versus the Trump administration, Mr. Garcia's interests are, quote, particularly weighty. Again, that doesn't resolve it, but it tells you this isn't a jump ball. He has weighty or strong interests, which is what you'd expect for someone stuck in a foreign prison when the people who sent them there admit it was a mistake and he shouldn't even be there. And they could bring him back, but they won't. Now, the skepticism from this court was also clear in a related issue about citizenship and immigration, but not this case. The wider question of whether executive orders can rewrite the Constitution. Legal spoiler alert, that's never been the case. But we heard skepticism from multiple justices in Thursday's oral arguments.
Why would you ever take this case to us?
Well, Justice Kagan asked my questions better than I could have.
Did I understand you correctly to tell Justice Kagan that the government wanted to reserve its right to maybe not follow a Second Circuit precedent?
Your argument seems to turn our justice system, in my view at least, into a catch-me-if-you-can kind of regime.
They're finding these actions illegal because they're exceeding existing authority.
I don't understand how that is remotely consistent with the rule of law.
That's the skepticism. Meanwhile, there's new criticism of Trump leaning into parts of the trappings of autocratic government. We saw the foreign trip, cozying up to people that he once called terror funders, seeking a huge gift from their king, prepping his own military parade. Now his administration erecting a controversial banner of his face that adorns a federal building. This is not typically what you see in America. It doesn't break any particular law, but it's a vibe. Trump also has pushed talk of breaking constitutional limits, like ruling past 2029. Then he walked back that claim under fire, while also pushing other anti-democratic moves. He's pushed out several FBI directors, undercutting the traditional 10-year term that tries to fight partisanship. He's raged against the very first one he memorably fired, James Comey. Of course, all Comey did to upset Trump was testify under oath. Investigations found it to be truthful, but that got him not only Trump's ire or anger, which is perfectly fine, you can have that feeling, but rather alleged abuse of government powers. Trump openly advocated investigating or jailing him as an opponent, attacked him in the first term. There was an unusual tax audit, remember that, which raised questions about whether that was intrusive retribution. And now this week, Trump seizing on Comey's Instagram post, which would be laughable if this was not a pretext for serious government abuse. You are looking at a very simple thing that Comey says he observed walking on the beach, seashells spelled out referencing 86ing 47, a kind of reference to opposing the 47th president, which of course is the current president, Donald Trump. 86 refers to something being sold out. It actually dates all the way back to 1930s soda counter slang. Webster's Dictionary's website explained, and this was written up long before this week, it means to throw out, to get rid of, refuse service to. Others, though, have at times also tried that slang out to reference taking someone out or something sinister. It's just not the original definition. Now, some people alleged Comey's post was some kind of, quote, call to violence. He denied that, and out of caution, even removed the post. So keep all of that seashell history in mind, because now Trump and his aides are using the seashells to fan an allegation that this was a real serious threat.